This year, I listened to 70 audiobooks, and I'm going to talk you through all of my 5-star reads. Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, your one-stop spoiler-free shop for all things audiobook. I've completed 70 audiobooks this year, not including the one I'm in progress on right now and a couple of DNFs. I have a little bit more time in the year, so that number might go up by 1 or 2, but for now I'm going to be talking about the 70 that I've completed to date, as this will be my last video for 2025. I had 12 5-star reads this year, so it doesn't make sense to me to cut it down to a top 10 when I have such a natural top 12. So I'm going to talk you through each one, tell you what I liked about it, and a little bit about what it's about, and then we'll cut to my top books of the year if I can narrow it down to those. The Road by Cormac McCarthy, narrated by Tom Stetschulte, is a book that I know not everyone falls in love with, but for me, the immersion in the world of a father and son walking along a road was just captivating. When you look at their situation, which is essentially vague, but probably post-apocalyptic, it's really harrowing. And I know that's not for everyone, but for me, the subtleties of language between this father and son in their circumstance grabbed me immediately and didn't let go. And even though it's a book that I know is very harrowing, I was all for it. Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang was a perfect dark academia fantasy. This book grabbed me on the first page, and it didn't let me go. It follows Siona, who is the very first woman to become a high mage in her city, in which magic and religion are highly linked. Now, she's in a very unusual position, and what she does with that position is equally unusual. Moira Quirk brought really fabulous narration and intense emotion to this story that I will not stop recommending anytime soon. Perhaps the biggest surprise of the year is Sipsworth by Simon Van Boy. Now, I didn't really expect to like this book a whole lot. I just thought it might be cute. It was very heartfelt and very heartwarming, and it caught me completely off guard. It's narrated by Christine Rundell, and she does an amazing job of portraying an older woman who's basically ready to die, who makes a mistake and ends up letting a mouse into her house. The events all unravel from there, but this story was just special, and I really enjoyed the simple, heartfelt nature of this feel-good book. The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali blew me away. This book has not been a letdown for anyone I've recommended it to, and I've recommended it to a lot of people. They've all come back this year and said that this was one of their best reads of the year, and I can't agree more. It follows a relationship between two women growing up in Iran, and it's during the time preceding and during the Iranian Revolution when women's rights are changing drastically in Iran. We follow the two friends over many, many decades, and we see how the changes in Iran's governmental structure affect their lives in very different ways. Mohan Navabi and Nikki Masood did an outstanding job with the narration, and I really appreciated the subtleties of the relationship and the way that this played out. I learned so much, and I definitely went down a research rabbit hole after finishing this book. It's not my first 5-star Marjan Kamali book, but boy, does she really suck me in as a listener. A Place for Us by Fatima Farheen Mirza is definitely a book I will not soon forget. In fact, more than once I have compared this book to East of Eden. I feel like this book comes the closest to the power I felt in East of Eden and the gut punch of the ending of that book. I really felt swept up in the characters. At the beginning of the book, we are at the wedding of the eldest daughter of a Muslim family living in California. You learn quickly that her younger brother has been estranged for several years, and they're seeing him for the first time at this wedding. Just when you think you're about to learn why he's estranged, the book cuts back to the childhood of each person in the family and really tells you about their relationships with their parents individually. I found myself so swept up in this, and the way that the book unraveled was completely unexpected to me. I really loved every moment of it. Deepti Gupta and Sunil Malhotra narrate this book, and I think their amount of emotion in every scene was perfection. I could not anticipate how much I would feel listening to this story, and it's one that I would reread in a heartbeat, even knowing what happens. Small Rain by Garth Greenwell is an unusual story, narrated by the author. Now, I'm going to just say right off the bat, this book is not for everyone. I loved it, however. It follows a man who's enduring a medical crisis during COVID, so he is really in the depths of isolation. He's hospitalized and he's essentially away from everyone, except for his caretakers. So it really gets you in his head as far as the things that he's grappling with as far as his own fate and his own health, and the small things around him that he has to sort of rely on observationally to entertain himself and keep his mind occupied, given that he has no one around him and he is isolated. I got lost in the passages of this beautiful musing. Now, it doesn't have as strong of an arc as many narratives do. However, I think if you're patient with this one, the payoff is huge. The only nonfiction book that I awarded 5 stars to was Endurance by Alfred Lansing. It follows the journey of Edward Shackleton in his 1914 Trans-Antarctic expedition, which fails, yet this is an incredible story. It very much reads like fiction, and Simon Prebble, the narrator, carries this book so well that even listening to terminology about sailing and sea and ships, things that I'm not familiar with that could have been very dry, I was on the edge of my seat the entire way through, even knowing how this story ends, given that it's a real account of something that actually happened. This book for me was an outstanding nonfiction read, and if you want nonfiction that feels like fiction, this is a great pick. The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong was one that crept up on me slowly. I didn't realize for probably the first third of the book how very invested I was in these characters. It follows a young man named Hai who is not really finding his way in life, and he's about to do something dramatic when he meets Grzina, an elderly Lithuanian woman who is suffering from dementia. Grzina offers Hai a way to feel useful, and from there things pick up for him. This is very much a found family story where all of the family members are complete misfits, and they were so endearing. I don't want to give away a lot about the plot, but I really think this book is a perfect blend of charming and silly, but also very heartfelt and deep. Now, James Aaron O narrates this story, and honestly, I think this might be the best narration that I've heard all year. He's a newcomer to audiobooks, but man, is he outstanding. I think we'll hear a lot more from this narrator in the future, who very much elevated the story, even though the story was already excellent. The Poison King by Katherine Rundell is the second book in the Impossible Creatures series, and I really always feel like sequels might not hold up, but in this case, this book felt like a perfect extension of the first story. It's different for sure, as this one really focuses on Christopher, and he's helping to save a princess in this story. But many of the characters that you know and love from the first book emerge and evolve in this story as well. It's narrated by Sam West, who, to me, is the perfect voice for middle grade adventure. Now, this was a little bit of a side quest, but I have to say it's made me even more excited for the next books in the series. So I very much look forward to hearing more from Katherine Rundell, as, in my opinion, the lady can do no wrong. The Road to Tender Hearts by Annie Hartnett is a book I will not soon forget. Now, I've read 2 other books of hers, Unlikely Animals and Rabbit Cake, and I feel like you can really feel the evolution of her style by reading those books. This book is essentially achieved perfection in my mind. It follows a 62-year-old man who's struggling with alcoholism and wins the lottery, and he spends every morning having breakfast with his ex-wife and her new boyfriend, so things are weird for PJ. PJ also recently learned that his one who got away from high school has been widowed, and he sets out on a journey to go win her heart. Before he sets out on that journey, however, he inherits his late brother's orphan grandchildren, and mayhem ensues. This book was ridiculous, but it was so funny, and there was so much warmth in it, and I loved every second of it. I never saw what was coming, and it got me around every twist and turn. It was narrated by Mark Bramhall, who I'm not sure I'll ever hear in another book and not think of PJ, because he just was so perfectly suited for that voice. This one is a surprise, and it is definitely worth your time. Know that there are a couple of dark parts in it, but they're dark in a satirical humor kind of way, not in a depressing, meant to be sad sort of way. So I think you'll enjoy it. My Friends by Fredrik Backman is not the first Fredrik Backman book I've read, but it is the first one that blew me out of the water. I really fell in love with this story. It follows a young girl who's orphaned. She's about to turn 18, and she ends up, through some very odd circumstances, running into a man who she spends a train ride with. And on that train ride, he reminisces about his friends and his childhood, and the two share a very unusual bond. Now, as I was listening to this book, I kept wondering, what's this story about? And the truth is, it was doing what it was about from the very beginning. I just was looking for something bigger, and it didn't need to be bigger. In fact, the more I settled into it, the more I felt the beauty of the simplicity of this book, and it really grabbed me and pulled on my heartstrings. It's narrated by Marjan Ireland, who can do no wrong and is definitely one of my favorite narrators, but I really enjoyed this book, and I kind of understood the buzz about what everyone loves about Fredrik Backman after this one, because I hadn't previously, and now I think I'm on that train. Anxious People by Fredrik Backman is significantly more complicated than I anticipated. It follows a would-be bank robber who doesn't really succeed and ends up holding an apartment full of prospective buyers of said apartment hostage. The events unfold over the entirety of a day, and let's just say that nothing ends up the way that you expect. There were so many characters packed into this story, and every one of them was distinct and useful to the story. In fact, I can't think of one that you could pluck out who would not alter the story irreparably. I really enjoyed this book, and I love the way that Fredrik Backman plays on your emotions in such a heartfelt and warm way. This book was narrated by the incomparable Marjan Ireland, who I just think is outstanding, and she handled a huge cast of characters with grace and distinction, and she deserves an A+ for this one, but Fredrik Backman does too. Delightful and moving in spite of a plot that was complete and utter chaos. I think if I had to pick my top books for the year, it's really hard to narrow it down to 1 or even 3, so I'm gonna throw 4 of them out there. My Friends by Fredrik Backman is one that I will not soon forget and really tugged on my emotions. Similarly, The Road to Tender Hearts was hilarious and heartfelt, and I just did not see anything coming in that story. It made me really interested in Annie Hartnett as an author. Blood Over Brighthaven is the best fantasy dark academia that I read this year, and one that I would love to reread, even knowing everything that goes on in the story. It's made me very interested in M.L. Vuong, and I have more of her books on my list, and I really can't wait to see what else she has done. This book for me filled a void this year, especially given that I was disappointed in R.F. Kuang's Catabasis, which I really had high hopes for. So M.L. Vuong, thanks for having another pair of initials that rhyme with Kuang, because you really helped me out. Lastly, A Place for Us by Fatima Farheen Mirza. This is a book I will never stop thinking about, just like East of Eden, and I really feel like it's one that is so powerful and so moving, and I love family drama, and I didn't really know that until I started to get into it, but the more I read books of this style and about this content, the more I love them. So this one is definitely a top pick for me this year. Each one of these books is totally different, but they all struck me in their own way, and I really loved each one of them. I'd love to know what books did that for you this year, whether they're the same as mine or completely different. There's lots of great books out there, and I'm always looking for recommendations. So even if you read one book this year and you loved it, that's a win. Let me know in the comments what books you read this year that you think shouldn't be missed. But remember, you might love what I hate and hate what I love, so make your own opinion, but thanks for listening to mine. I'll see you in 2026. Thanks for watching and Happy New Year!